Hello and welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are 1 Kings 16 and 17, and to tell this story, I am in my pantry, and for very good reason. You will see why in a moment. Well, in 1 Kings 16, there is a list of 5 shocking kings. Starts out with King Baasha. Now, a prophet by the name of Hanani says to him, look, the way you're going, you're not going to lead for long. And so he dies, and his son Elah takes his place. Now, Elah is as bad as his dad. In fact, one day he's drunk in his administrator's house, and Zimri, who is in charge of 1/2 of the chariots in the army, comes into the palace while Elah is drunk, kills him. Well, Zimri's kingship only lasted 7 days. He made himself king, but the commander of the army said, who does this guy think he is? Commander of half the chariots becoming king. So he surrounds Zimri. And 7 days later, Zimri sets his own palace on fire to try and escape. And Zimri's 7-day kingship comes to an end. And Omri, now the military leader of Israel, that's the northern kingdom, is installed as king. So effectively, we've had a military coup. And Omri wasn't a very good king anyway, but he leads for 12 years. And in that time, he builds a city in Samaria on a hill. And he dies, and his son Ahab takes over from him. Now, Ahab is described as the worst of the kings, worse than Jeroboam. And in addition to that, he marries a woman called Jezebel that we'll hear about tomorrow. So that sets us up for Elijah. Elijah the Tishbite. He's a prophet that God raises up, and he confronts Ahab and says, come on, God's warning you now. Stop it. Turn back to him. And, Ahab's not listening. So he says, well, the rain's going to stop, and there's going to be no dew on the ground until I say so. God says to Elijah the Tishbite, you better run, boy, because those in authority don't like what you've said. So he hides in this ravine called Kiriath, near a brook. And God sends ravens to come and feed him in the morning with bread and meat, and at night. And he stays there, hiding. God looking after him. You see, what we've got to realize is that when our leaders and when a land is sinning against God and the consequences roll out over that land, which it does, we see it all over the world, the Christians, the God followers, we catch the aftermath of that flag, don't we? Anyway, so the brook dries up, and so God catches his attention. So Elijah realizes, listen, God's no longer giving me water. I better go. So he leaves. So God's using circumstances to get Ahab's attention and to get Elijah's attention. Now, God uses all sorts of methods to speak to us. He speaks to us through his word. He speaks to us through dreams. And sometimes he puts roadblocks in our way. Like there's a roadblock now for Elijah. The brook, there's no water. I've got to go and find water. Otherwise, I'm going to die. Often God does that. We're marching headlong. We're not listening to the other things that he's saying to us. So boom, he puts a roadblock in front. A young guy came to me the other day and said, listen, I want to do this. And a pastor has told me I shouldn't do it. Can you overrule? Can you give me another perspective? Well, you know what I thought? I thought, actually I could get this pastor together with this young guy. We could talk about it, but I'm just going to put a roadblock there for a while. So I said, let me just pray about it. In the time that I have taken to pray about it, well, something's been revealed in this young guy's heart that God's revealing it to him. I mean, he loves God and God loves him. But sometimes God puts a roadblock with a delay, with a pause, with a change of circumstance. And we've got to stop and say, God, what are you saying? Anyway, so Elijah gets up and he goes to a certain town, and there is a woman there at Zarephath who he sees walking by, and he says, can I have some water? As she goes to fetch him a drink, he says, also, could you just organize me some bread? She says, listen, I've got nothing at home. I've got a little bit of oil, and I've got a little bit of flour, and then my oil is done, and my food is done. Then we're just going to curl up and die. Elijah says to her, go and, make your last meal. Go and do that. But before you do, use that stuff and make me some bread. and then afterwards, you'll have bread for your son. And so this woman does it. Can you believe it? And then this miracle happens until the rains come, that every time she cooks for him, every time she uses that oil and uses that flour, it just never runs out. I think there's a big lesson there. You know, God is saying to us that we need to trust him for our provision and invest in him first. That's why the tithe is the first fruit. That's why it's the first of our finance that we give back to the Lord, saying, Lord, even if it kills me, I'm giving to you. Even if I don't understand this, but I'm just trusting you by saying I'm going to invest in you first. Doesn't make sense, does it? But that's the way God works with us. Well, the story ends with this widow's son dying, and Elijah then is like thrust on his knees, and he says, God, please intervene. God seems to want us to live our entire lives trusting him for our provision, for our health, for our families, for our marriages. That's the way he wants us to live our lives.